We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani Pettiford, and we're broadcasting live from our studio. And what we do every single day, we hang out with people around the world to engage in a conversation about your life, your marriage, and that's what we do. I'm a marriage coach and an infidelity recovery specialist, and Couples Academy has been designed to help people do 3 things. We transition them. We take them on the road to recovery because they're in pain because of crisis and trials and tribulations in their relationship, and they want to get to a better place. So in that road to recovery, what we do is we help people to eradicate the pain, but then we help place them on the path to fulfillment so that they can begin to experience what? The pleasure in their relationship. And then last but not least, we're transitioning them to what? Building their kingdom where they can tap into the power and purpose of their partnership. That's the journey, folks, because all of you were designed and created to do a phenomenal thing. But when you come together with your partner, we truly believe that marriage is God's secret weapon for kingdom domination in the earth realm. And so when you understand who you are and when you understand the purpose for your unity within your marriage, there's certain things you can do in this earth realm to make a tremendous impact, not only on your life, not only on your family, but people from around the world. So welcome to the Couples Academy Show. We've been in a series the last couple of days talking about sexual addiction because this is one of the things that people struggle with that oftentimes leads to an affair or all types of behaviors within the realm of that relationship. We were talking about some of the causes, some of the signs, some of the symptoms, but today we're going to, we weren't talking about the causes. We were talking about the signs and the symptoms. Today we're talking about the causes. In fact, there are 8 causes of a sex addiction, and we're going to take the time to unearth that so you know. Now listen, before we do that, we're just a month away. That's right, 1 month away. The Last Chance Weekend is fast approaching. We want to make sure that if this is something that you want to do, meaning restoring the relationship, finding healing and restoration, this is the place you want to be. We've been doing it for quite some time. It has had a tremendous impact on the lives of so many people, and we want you to be a part of that experience. So take a look at this video, and we'll be right back. That's right. That's the Last Chance Weekend, November the 12th to the 14th. Make sure you go to the website. There's a link in the description. You can find out more about that. Set up a discovery call and get with us right away so that we can find a spot for you and your spouse to get what it is that you've come for. Remember, people come from a place of desperation. Many people are living quiet lives of desperation, and they're suffering in silence. And that does not have to be your story anymore. You can turn things around by making a destiny decision that will change the course of your life. Listen, God has put a system in place, and he's allowed individuals to be a part of that system. And if you tap into it, you can have more in your life and in your marriage than what you thought was possible. Listen, we're asking that you subscribe, like, and share. Click that notification button. Let the world know that we're on so that we can engage in this conversation. The 8 causes of sex addiction. I want to read something to you. We were talking a day or so ago about one of the symptoms or the visible signs of a sex addiction. Oftentimes we think about sex with someone else, but we don't consider self-sex, self-pleasure, self-stimulation in the form of masturbation. Now, we know that excessive masturbation is one of the symptoms of a sex addiction because there's this urge and this drive to get not a high, but to get a release. And oftentimes it happens in that particular way. And if this is what you find yourself engaged in, it may be an indication that you're struggling. In the book, I interviewed someone who was willing to share their experience. And this is what it says. It says, for 6 years, I've struggled with the spirit of lust. I was never a real promiscuous man, but the desire for sex kept me trapped in a self-destructive behavior. Understanding that sex was off limits outside my marriage, I often settled for the next best thing, masturbation. It was an excessive compulsive habit that often drove me to the point of no possible return. Masturbation was my drug, and my body craved for it. I often compared myself to Pookie in New Jack City. Remember that movie way back in the day, New Jack City? And Chris Rock played Pookie. He was the drug addict. He said, I compared myself to Pookie simply because the drug that I had eternally been addicted to kept calling me. Anything that remotely reminded me of the pleasures of sex resulted in self-stimulating a one-man show. Late night movies, women's magazines, sexually explicit music, porn, music videos, large breasts drove me past temptation into the wilds of physical pleasure. Vaseline, lotion, naked pinups, private porn tapes, and a vast imagination were the tools that I used to meet my sexual high. My dirty deed was not limited to a late night visitation within the solitudes of my own home. On the contrary, it accompanied me at all times, spaces and places. It followed me into public bathroom stalls, street alleyways, behind parked cars, woodsy areas, and even in gridlock traffic. While people often left non-smoking public areas to inhale a soothing but fatal nicotine stick, I often left public premises to relieve a burning fire sparked from within. Though the pleasurable indulgence soothed the savage beast that lay within me, it often caused me to drop to my knees in guilt, pity, and shame. This is a challenge, folks. This is a struggle. So when you're engaging in a sexual pleasure, but guilt and shame is attached to it, is an indication that, guess what? It's controlling you. Yes, sex, you have to understand, sex is a gift. Sex is an amazing experience that God created for those within a covenant relationship. It should be pleasurable. It should be mutually fulfilling. It should be one of those things that, bind you together as a couple. It should have intimacy involved in it. But when sex is out of its natural season, used in a way that it was not designed to be used, it can be destructive. Just think about, I want you to think about this. Think about gunpowder. Gunpowder can be used for destruction, or gunpowder can be used for entertainment. We see this all the time. 4th of July, right? New Year's Eve, many holidays. We see these beautiful fireworks that lace the sky, the sound, the visual impact of it. It is marvelous. It is amazing. That's what we would call a positive use of gunpowder. But you can put gunpowder into a bullet and shoot someone and kill them. Destructive. So once again, sex is like that. Someone once said a grape can be used for medicinal purposes. A grape can be used for its nutritional value, but that same grape, given a certain spin and given a certain twist, can do great harm. So it's not what you use, it's how you use what you use. And so sex, when used the right way, can be a benefit. Sex used the wrong way can be a detriment. I hope this is making sense. Before we get started, to Miss Jules Gonzalez, Tanya, Al, E. Talisha, Lakeisha, Fedelina, Torre, Sean, the list goes on and on. We just want to welcome you into the room. And for those who you are watching on the replay, we want to welcome you as well. Understand, we now have about 240 videos based upon episodes that we've done from the very beginning. And guess what? We're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep giving you information that will empower you to take your relationship to the next level. So we're talking about the 8 causes. So let's dive right into the conversation. Came across a very powerful visual that really explains what we're dealing with here. So let's take a look at this. Number 1, these are the factors in unwanted sexual habits. Now, as we take a look at this, we see this pie is divided into 2 halves. One is what we will call inherent or inherited factors, and the other one happens to be environmental factors. Now, one thing about it, if you look at this image again, the inherited or inherent factors, it's really 55% of this pie, and the environmental factors are 45% of the pie. So when we're talking inherent or inherited, we're talking about things that you have received from birth, or things that you've received at a very young age when you were the most impressionable. And then when we talk about environmental factors, right, these are the circumstances that we were raised in and were susceptible to. Now, in both cases, whether inherent or inherited or environmental, overwhelmingly, these things were beyond your control. Once again, you came out one way or you were exposed to something very young. So this was beyond your control. And this is important to understand because many people who have a sex addiction oftentimes go into the blame game where they begin to blame themselves and take on all of this guilt and all of this shame and all of this responsibility for things that were beyond their control in a certain season of their life. Now, here's the deal. If it's true that you were born with something, some people think, well, if I was born that way, then that's the way I'm supposed to be. Oh, not so. Not so at all. There are changes. There are things that you can do to overcome certain struggles and challenges that you have. Sometimes being in full awareness and knowing how to manage your life accordingly allows you to overcome certain challenges that you struggle with for a long time. So taking a look at this once again, let's break this thing down. Number 1, we see personality traits as a contributing factor to sex addiction. Well, what does that mean? It's a fact that some people were born with a certain personality where they seem to be more emotional or have a higher sensitivity to things than other people. Think about an empath type of a person. An empath person is a person who feels more than other people. They can feel a room. They can feel the emotions of other people. Oftentimes they can take on the feelings and emotions of another person. They're emotionally in touch and in tune and intuitive to what's happening with other people in their world, in their environment. That's a personality thing. Like with all personalities that we know from Enneagram, there are positive aspects of it, there are negative aspects of it, but this is a trait. So maybe you're a very sensitive or emotional person that can connect in a way that a typical person cannot. Right. Maybe you're a person who is born who has a high sensitivity to touch. You know, if I think about, I have 4 children, right? There's one child I have, she's not really touchy feely at all. You know, I remember when she was a child, hugging her, and when she had no control over it, what could she do? But, you know, as she grew up, she was just like, okay, I'm good. Thank you. All right. Okay. Where the other one is constantly hanging on us, you know, cuddled up, snuggled up. That's just who she is, right? So there are some people who have a very sensual quality to them. When we say senses, we're not talking about sexuality. Your eyes are a sense. Your ears are a sense. Touch, smell, taste, those are senses. So someone who's more sensually kind of connected, they have a higher quality. And so in essence, they have a higher response rate to touch. So now when you bring in sexual touch, you know, an orgasm is something that we all experience and we enjoy. But someone who has a sex addiction or someone who has a high sensitivity to touch, an orgasm can have a completely different impact. And remember, we were talking about dopamine. How dopamine levels rise in the reward center of your brain when you experience certain things. So it is a high above all other highs for a person who has a high sensitivity to touch. I hope this is making sense. Then there are personality types that are more withdrawn. They're quiet. They're unbecoming. They sit back in the crowds. You know, these are individuals who typically may not get their needs met. The attention is not on them. They feel kind of isolated and disconnected, and they're longing for something that they may not currently have. But it's not just other people's fault or the environment. A part of their personality places them in such a position where they're people don't know. People may not know what they need, you know, and these are personality traits that we have to consider. Am I saying that sex addicts have a personality trait? No, I need you to get clarity. There are many factors or contributing factors to how people become what they become, why people do what they do. So we're giving you some foundation of possibilities that may contribute, you know, those birthing processes or childhood patterns that develop into your adulthood that take on certain forms in your life that can manifest into things that are unhealthy. And in this case, we're talking about sex addiction. All right. Now, one of the other things that we want to talk about are ancestral patterns. Ancestral patterns. There are things that we have inherited from our ancestors. You know, many people have heard of the term generational curses. Now, generational curses are the cumulative effect on a person of things that their ancestors did, believed, or practiced in the past. And as a consequence of the ancestral's actions, beliefs, and sins, things are passed down. Yeah. If you're a person of faith, you've heard about generational curses and generational blessings, and it's a real thing. There are certain families, and if you look at the history, there was incest in the family. There was sexual abuse in that family, sexual addiction in the family. There was infidelity in the family. There were patterns of abusing women or little children in the family. Now, here's the interesting thing. Oftentimes, you don't have to be aware of what is in one's history or if what's in one's past to be affected by it. And so as the scripture says, it talks about how the sins of the father are passed down even to the 5th generation. And sometimes generations are skipped over. So it doesn't mean that every single person in the line of succession is going to be susceptible to the same thing. It can skip over a generation, but boom, here it comes again. Here comes that thing again. Why do I feel the way that I feel? Why do I have the temptations that I have? Why do I have these desires that I can't figure out? Why do I continue to struggle with being faithful in the relationship? Well, it's a spiritual thing, folks. There's a generational curse that's been passed down, and you have to become spiritually aware and in tune with what's happening in the spiritual realm so that you can take authority over your life, over your family, over your household, and break the cycle. Now, we already know that if you've been exposed to it, if you've seen it, if there was a model that you are now mirroring, we already know how vulnerable we can be to that. But when you don't know, it's worth digging in deeper to figure out the contributing factors, because when you do, it will make a significant difference in how you really attack this whole issue of sexual addiction. It is an issue that affects many of us, folks, but it doesn't have to affect you for long. That's why we're talking about this here today, the 8 causes of sexual addiction. Listen, you're watching the Couples Academy show. We will be right back after this quick announcement. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. You're watching the Couples Academy show. If you're just tuning in, my name is Hassani. I am a marriage coach and infidelity recovery specialist, and every single day we come on to talk about topics that are relevant to what it is that you may be dealing with in your household. And today we're talking about the 8 causes of a sex addict. All right, here we go. We're going back. Sensitivities. We talked about personality traits, ancestral patterns, and sensitivities. And once again, that kind of leans and bleeds into the personality traits in terms of having a high emotional sensitivity to things, a high physical sensitivity to things. That's 55%, folks. But then let's go to the other side, the environmental factors. There's age of first exposure. Now, how many of you were exposed to things beyond or before you were ready for it, right? The level of maturity you did not have when you saw certain things. So maybe it was pornography. You know, the age is getting younger and younger and younger. There was a crazy statistic that I heard just the other day. It said something like about 45% of kids watch porn while doing homework. Could you imagine being 8, 9, 10 years old and you were exposed to something which created some type of curiosity, and now you're obsessed with it, and your mind and your body and your emotions are not mature enough to even understand or comprehend what's happening? That has an impact on your psyche. It has an impact on your desires and temptations, and you begin to develop things at a very young age that you're like, why do I feel this way? But I feel the need to go into it a lot deeper. And that's why we see that the earlier you're exposed to pornography, the earlier you are exposed to a touch, possibly from a family member or a friend, you begin to engage in behaviors that manifest into your adulthood that become very excessive, compulsive, uncontrollable. And it all started with a seed that was planted when you were very young. Many people have been abused at a young age, right? And so as a result of that, they have consensual sex at a young age. Yeah, I was 12, when I first, I was 13, 14 right? So they experienced things when they weren't ready. Maybe things were forced upon them, and it created a curiosity and a desire. And then they began to pursue or seek out what it is that they ultimately wanted, knowing that their bodies weren't fully developed, their minds weren't fully developed, their emotions weren't fully developed, and they had a warped sense of sexuality from a very young age. And so if we don't take the time to unpack it, we're gonna have problems. Do you know how many couples literally have been married for years and still keep the secret? There are certain conversations with couples that are completely off limits. You can't bring that up. You can't talk to me about that because that represents a dark place. And I don't trust you with my past. I'm still struggling with shame. I'm still struggling with guilt. I still haven't overcome it. And guess what? I show up sexually in my marriage based upon the challenges that I've gone through that I haven't even revealed to you. And so you're stuck wondering, why do we have the problem when it comes to sexuality in our relationship? Either there's this high demand for sex, or there's this disinterest of sex, or we have an asexual relationship because something that happened in your childhood that you can't even tell me about. I'm your life partner. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you become the best version of yourself, to help you heal, to help you find support. And you're denying me what I need to understand what's going on in this relationship. My spouse is having sex all over the place and I just don't know why. Why is he not attracted to me? Why does she not want me? Why does it seem like sex is always associated with something dark and bad and sinister? Think about it. If your introduction into sex was not healthy, now you make an association with bad behavior and sexuality. So therefore, you don't necessarily have a healthy desire to have sex within the confines of your marriage because psychologically you're associating it with being dirty and wrong and bad. And so that's why you slip away and engage in sex clubs and sex parties and prostitutes and porn and masturbation because of your psychological, the psychological perspective that you have on sex, which is crippling the sexuality in your marriage. These are the things that happen, folks. These are the things that we have to talk about. But here's the deal. Sex is one of the things that we often love to do, but don't like to talk about it because of everything that's attached to this experience. It's very problematic. There's some comments in here. Jay says, if my husband was on a dating app for months requesting naked pics of women, is that a sign of a type of sexual addiction? It can be. So let me say this, guys. Oftentimes what we do, if we're not licensed, if we're not educated or trained on things, we look at symptoms and signs and then make evaluations. So for instance, in this case, he's looking at pictures or seeking out pictures of another woman. He's a sex addict. Or he or she cheated with another person. She's a sex addict. Or somebody is, self-centered. You're a narcissist. Like, we put so many labels on people. So I appreciate the fact that you're asking the question. This is what I would say. If you're experiencing any of these signs, it is an indication that it is a great possibility that this could be the issue that they're dealing with. But I would encourage you, dig a little deeper, do a little bit more research, watch these videos again, start connecting dots, then begin having conversation with your spouse. Now, interestingly enough, sex, there's so much shame attached to it. Overwhelmingly, most people would not admit that they have a sex addiction. First of all, most people would not admit to having any type of an addiction. We know people who are drunk all day, all night, but will not admit to being an addict. There are people who are constantly using drugs. They say recreationally, I got this under control. It's no big deal. I got this. But they are an addict, but won't admit it. They're, especially when it comes to sex. I just have a high sex drive. What's wrong with that? Yeah, I just have a curiosity. What's wrong with that? And so they would not admit that they're a sex addict. So if you're trying to, I'm not talking about you, but if any of us are trying to get our spouse to admit it, just admit it, it's like an uphill battle. And this is why bringing in a third party who's licensed and skilled in this particular work is necessary, because they could receive a message from someone else that they may not be able to receive for you for a multitude of reasons. And this is why it's so critically important to stop trying to do this on your own. There's so many other people who can be there as a support system to help you overcome what it is that you're going through. I can't believe it's 30 minutes already. We're going to have to take this into tomorrow. I hope that you've enjoyed this conversation thus far. Not that it's an enjoyable conversation, but for some, it's an enlightening conversation that we're going to continue. There's a part 4 tomorrow. We're going to close this series up. We're going to talk about the other causes, but then, okay, if I'm a sex addict, what do I do about it? How do I overcome this addiction and get back to a place of normalcy? If you want the answers to that question, you got to tune in tomorrow. Love you guys. See you in the AM.